Today we are starting with geometry, our sine, cosine, and tangent. Most of you have already done this in geometry class, so this should be relatively simple for us. Trigonometry is the study of triangle measurements. So when we're doing trigonometry, it has to do with triangles. When we're dealing with triangles, a lot of time it has to deal with trig. We have 3 buttons. You will notice those 3 buttons are on your calculator. Right here, we have our sine, our cosine, and our tangent. It's not the calculator I want to show you, but it is what it is. Where is the calculator I want to show you guys? Here it is. We have our sine, our cosine, and our tangent. Our sine is going to be dealing with the opposite and hypotenuse sides. Cosine deals with adjacent hypotenuse, and tangent deals with opposite and adjacent. The very first thing that we're always going to want to do is we are going to want to find our hypotenuse. If you can find your hypotenuse, that is great. If you need help, remember your hypotenuse is always opposite of our right angle. So we go through our right angle and it points straight to our hypotenuse. After you've found your hypotenuse, then we can go ahead and start figuring out our opposite and adjacent signs. Before we can find that, we have to figure out where are we starting at? What angle are we using? Let's start with angle A. So if we're standing on angle A, we need to figure out what is opposite of me and what is next to me, or adjacent. Adjacent also means next to. So opposite, the same way we found our hypotenuse, we can draw that big long line all the way across, and we see that our little a is our opposite, and right next door is letter B, our adjacent. We said sine is opposite in hypotenuse, so that means A goes on top and C goes on the bottom. Cosine is adjacent or next to in our hypotenuse, so that's our B and our C. Oops. And our tangent is our opposite and our adjacent, AB. Now we need to erase almost everything. Leave your hypotenuse, that stuff doesn't move. And this time, we're going to look from our B angle. Which one is straight across? Which one is opposite? That would be our letter B. And our adjacent is letter A this time. So opposite of over hypotenuse, or sine of angle B, would be letter B over letter C. Our cosine of B is our adjacent, which is A, over our hypotenuse, C. And then tangent of angle B would be our opposite, B, over our adjacent, A. If at this point you are completely lost, that's fine. I expect you to be completely lost. It'll be okay. Stick with me until we get through these problems, and it should make more sense. This part right here is going to be really important. The easiest way to remember, or the way that we've always tried to teach people to remember sine, cosine, and tangent, is by using the SOHCAHTOA. S is for sine, O for opposite, and H for hypotenuse. We put the first one on top, so we put opposite on our top fraction and hypotenuse on our bottom. C for cosine, A for adjacent, and H for hypotenuse. Adjacent on top, hypotenuse on the bottom. Last one is T for tangent, O for opposite, and A for adjacent. If you can remember this, then you should be pretty set with our trig functions. If you cannot remember that, then we're going to have a problem. So I need you guys to make sure that you can remember this. Let's go ahead and start practicing though. Remember, the first thing we said we always want to do is find our hypotenuse. So I'm going to draw a line through my right angle, and we point at 13. Hypotenuse is the one thing that's not going to move if you start looking at different angles. Let's start off with angle A. We need to identify which number is across from or opposite from, and we need to figure out our adjacent. So all the way across the triangle, across the street, the farthest number away is our letter 5, our number 5, so we would call this our opposite. The one that is right next door, the closest number that is not our hypotenuse, is our adjacent. So we said sine is opposite, 5, over hypotenuse, 13. Cosine is adjacent, 12, over hypotenuse, 13. And tangent is our opposite, 5, over our adjacent, 12. Now we need to erase everything we just did except for that hypotenuse, because now we are looking from our C angle. And I know I'm looking there because they told me. My opposite is now 12. Oops. I forgot what I was doing, sorry. My adjacent is 5. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. We would put 12 over 13. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, 5 over 13. And tangent is opposite, 12 over adjacent, 5. If for some reason you notice that you have a missing side length, you can always find it if you have the other two by using our Pythagorean theorem. We know that our hypotenuse is our C. So we would have 9 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. 9 times 9 is 81. 12 times 12 is 144. When we add those together, we get 225. And to undo our square, we take the square root of both sides. And the square root of 225 is 15. And then we could continue. However, we are not doing problem number 2 and problem number 3. We're going to jump right into what is actually important, which is the math. Again, the very first thing we always want to do is find our hypotenuse. And I'm just going to circle it in blue for now. My hypotenuse is across from my right angle. After we have found our hypotenuse, we can work on finding our opposite and our adjacent. Now, this time they don't tell us where we need to start. They didn't tell us use sine of 32 or sine A. We're going to start with whatever angle they gave us that is not the right angle. They gave us angle 28. That's where we're going to sit at. That's where we're going to start looking. I know I have my hypotenuse. And I also have my opposite. So I need to figure out what uses opposite and hypotenuse only. So I'm going to look back up here. Opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So we would do sine. And again, remember it's opposite over hypotenuse, which means we're going to find the sine of 28 and set that equal to our opposite, x, over our hypotenuse, 19. Now, if you have an equation, if you are doing one of these, and you find that your x value is on top of the fraction, what I want you to do is pick this 19 up and put it in front of sine. The reason that we can do that is because we currently have x divided by 19. I don't want x divided by anything. So I would multiply that 19 away, and it would end up 19 sine of 28. That is unfortunately not the final answer. The next step is to find sine of 28. This is a little bit difficult to do on our calculators because they are not how we would want them. We would hit 28 in our calculator, and then you would hit sine. My calculator is backwards, so we're not going to use that one anymore. We'll use this calculator. So we would hit 28 and then the sine button. And it gives me this big long decimal. And then we will multiply by 19. So I would hit times 19, and I get 8.9. So x equals 8.9. Let's try one more. We said this is our hypotenuse. We are sitting in this angle here. I know this is hypo. My opposite is all the way over there. And my adjacent is right next door. They did not give me my hypotenuse angle, so I cannot use this side. I can only use the sides they gave me, which is my adjacent and my hypotenuse, my adjacent and my opposite. If I look back up here, adjacent and opposite, the only one without hypotenuse is tangent. So we would have to find the tangent, which again is opposite over adjacent, right? Let's make sure I'm right, opposite over adjacent, which means I need to do the tangent of 41 equals x over 32. X is on top because it's opposite. Since x is on top of the fraction, I'm going to pick my 32 up and move it over here. Again, because I have to multiply it away. So I now have 32 times tangent of 41. So let's flip back to our calculator. We have 41 and then the tangent button times, what number was it? 32. So times 32, and we end up getting 27.8. On number 6, you'll notice this angle is outside. They're telling you it goes here, though. So 21 really goes inside of this angle. Let's do one more just to make sure we got it. First thing that I did is I identified my hypotenuse. My angle is sitting right here. Opposite is way over there, and there is nothing there, so we know we won't use that. The other thing they gave us is our adjacent. Adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So we're going to find the cosine, which is our adjacent over our hypotenuse. So we would do the cosine of 21 equals my adjacent x over my hypotenuse, 26. We move that 26 out front, so we have 26 times cosine of 21. And now we go to our calculator and type in 21 cosine times 26 equals 24.2. We're going to skip number 7. If you would like to do it, you can, but I'm not going to look for it. And we're going to jump straight to number 8. Number 8, same idea. I did not identify my hypotenuse, but I know it is right here. We are sitting inside of this 33 angle, and my 15 is all the way across, which means it is opposite. And we said x was our hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse, we said we would do sine. Remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So we would say that the sine of 33 equals x over, 15 over x. If you see that x is on the bottom, I should have given you a note on the side of your paper. If you notice that x is on the bottom, what we're going to do is take our sine of 53 and our x and trade places. So we will have x equals 15 over the sine of 33. The next thing we want to do is find sine of 33. And I want you to remember the first 4 decimals. So we said 33, and then our sign button, and the first 4 decimals is 5446. If your geometry teachers told you you can use 3 decimals, I'm fine with that, but I would prefer 4. So we have 15 divided by 0.5446, and then we type that into the calculator. 15 divided by 0.5446, 15 divided by 0.5446, and I end up with 25.4, 27.4. Done. Let's do 2 more examples. Number 19, I know that my hypotenuse is my x. And looking here at angle 43, 36 is right underneath it, so this is my adjacent. Hypotenuse and adjacent is going to be our cosine function. So we would have cosine of 43 equals adjacent on top, 36 divided by x. And again, I have x on bottom, so what I want to do is pick this whole thing up and pick this one up and flip-flop. So I would have x equals 36 divided by cosine of 43. We want to find the cosine of 43. So I hit 43 first and then cosine because our calculators work backwards. And we want to remember 7313. So I have 36 divided by 0.7313. If you have a number outside of the decimal, so if this number is not 1 or not 0, then you also would want to write it down. So if they gave you 1.7313, we would say 1.7313. Don't forget that if this number is not 0, you need to use it. We need to do 36 divided by 7313. So we do, I already forgot the number, 36 divided by 0.7313, 49.2. And let's do one more just to make sure we got it before I give you a little bit of help on the assignment for the day. First thing we want to do is identify our hypotenuse, which is way over here. There's nothing there, so we can't even use it. If we are sitting inside of our 72, way over here is my opposite, and right above us is our adjacent. Since we are not using a hypotenuse, we don't have one, that means we have to use tangent. And it is opposite over hypotenuse, right? Well, opposite over adjacent, not hypotenuse, Miss Leedy. Opposite on top, 25. Adjacent on the bottom, x. We flip-flop our tangent and our x, so we would have x equals 25 over tangent of 72. The tangent of 72 is 3.0776. So in this one, we have to use that 3. 3.0776. And I do 25 divided by 3.0776. And I end up with 8.1 for my length. We're not doing 11, we're not doing 12, and we're not doing 13. On your homework, I'm going to go ahead and give you this side length. This is 48. For your homework or your classwork, I want you to finish problems 1 through 11. You do not need to do 12. You do not need to do 13. You do not need to do 14. You do not need to do 15. I want you to just practice the triangles for me. Be careful. Make sure that you identify your hypotenuse first. And again, remember this side length right here is 48. Good luck.